Captain Fabulous.
Wait.
What do you got?
Okay.
Talk to me.
In the town of Louisville, they got a band they call Big Bad Bill. I can't bother. Let me start again.
Do it.
In the town of Louisville, they got a man they call Big Bad Bill. He was a fighting man, sure enough. I haven't got it today. I'm sorry. The end.
Oh my God. This is why I want us to go and let's sing Ding with the Strings of Night. Dear, when you smile at me.
Dear, when you smile at me, something inside of me.
Now I'm blanking.
Now, that's it. I am losing it here. You're watching an old man dissolve before your birthday. Thanks so much.
Sword of Omens, come to my hand. I, Lion-O, commanding. Thundercats. Ho!
What it's about.
Is there a characterization beyond that is a through line?
Yes, I hate this fucking microphone. That's the first characteristic.
Honestly, it's just you and me, so we can just do this if you
Let's
want.
do that.
All right, go ahead.
The bottom line is that I am a believer in archetypes, and I mean that comes from having grown up reading super duper comics, and my generation all came in reading the same things. We all read sword and sorcery, sword and planet novels, and a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and we were all weaned away from that ultimately by various editors and other people to go to crime fiction. But Michael Moorcock is the certain key of this. Moorcock writes a series of characters that are all the same person in different contexts and landscapes. And that inspired me enormously as a kid. And when I became a working professional, I realized that the archetype I chose visually, we were talking about this only minutes ago with Kevin Nolan, that of Henry Fonda, William Holden, and James Garner, who, for me at least, identify as the three main archetypes of American idealism in the mid-century, mid-20th century. There are those who looked at John Wayne. I'm not one of those people. Jimmy Stewart is a certain element of that as well, but Stewart is so regional. And whereas Garner and Fonda and Holden have an everyman quality about them, they are universally American in a real way. So the visual characterization has always been what Neil Simon once said, which is think Yiddish, go British. And that really is where it's at. My heroes are all look like white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, but they're all deeply Talmudic in their sensibilities. They are informed by Yiddishkeit, and that is inescapable. It's always been that way. And the comedy of the new Fantastic Four movie with Ben Grimm being overtly Jewish was really annoying to me because it felt fake, phony, and retrofitted.
Interesting.
Not that interesting.
Well, slightly.
Certainly the movie wasn't that interesting.
No, but I found that, you'll forgive me, but yeah, I found that wrinkle interesting. And also, I forget who put that on Ben. I mean, it wasn't obviously Stan and Jack's original. No. Again, they were thinking British as well.
I suspect there was some Gentile who thought it would be a good idea. It felt like a Gentilely imposed idea.
You're killing him.
My job. And so, but I've always felt that idea really informed me, and a lot of it came out of working for Gil Kane as his assistant. I met Gil when I was 13 at a bookstore. He was buying Will James books. Will James was a children's book writer and artist who had reinvented himself as a cattle drover when he ran away from home in Montreal. He was in the car with Tom Mix when Tom Mix died on the Pacific Coast Highway.
Wow. Tom Mix, great silent.
Let me silence my phone, sorry.
Quite all right. Tom Mix.
Cully Hammer is sending me photographs to make me laugh. That fuck.
Is it really Cully? That's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm on an hour-by-hour thread with Cully, Dave Johnson, Bill Sienkiewicz, and Mark Chiarello. And we've been talking shit all day today. It's been really good. I'm the old guy, so I'm a butt. But Gil hired me when I was 18 to be his gopher and assistant based on no talent. I had no skill sets. I offered nothing to the table. And I'm convinced in retrospect that he hired me because I was Jewish and that he could talk shit with me with impunity. And I'm not saying this with any irony. I mean this quite literally. Because he was a guy who invested an enormous amount of time and energy distancing himself from looking, as he did as a young man, like an anti-Semitic movie poster, to becoming a New Yorker cartoon in his early 20s. And as soon as that transformation took place, he looked like a Charles Saxon drawing. And the funny thing is Charles Saxon had the same transformation. Saxon was a classic New Yorker cartoonist who changed his name from some far more Yiddish name. But as soon as that happened, Gil became acutely aware of anti-Semitism in a profound and deep way. I suspect it was because he moved to Connecticut and was surrounded by a bunch of Jew baiters, with all due respect. And that really informed my way of thinking, because I came to understand that most comic books that I loved as a child were deeply generic and deeply universal, because that was their function. They were to appeal to all of them. And I didn't want to do those kind of comic books. I didn't have the mindset that was going to put me in. I couldn't do underground comics because I don't have that kind of head, you know. Although I smoked as much dope and used as many drugs as the underground guys did, I don't have the sensibility. I mean, I don't get it. I'm not that guy. I'm not Robert Crumb. I'm not Spain. I'm not one of those guys. I like mainstream stuff, but I like mainstream looking stuff with a sensibility that has a real point of view. And the point of view that I have is not one of patronizing and pandering. I mean, I'm one of those people who rejects the idea that superheroes are modern myth. We don't need modern myth. Myths are for people who are primitive cultured. We are not a primitive culture, at least in that sense. And I think that's sophistry at its most. I prefer to use comics as a medium that looks for content that can less patronize and pander than annoy and nudge. So that's me. You know, I like writing and drawing stuff about stuff that I like to read and write. So that's me. What do you got, John?
Well, building on that, that's why I love the dichotomy of American Century, your series that you did with David Tishman. If you guys have ever read it, I don't even, like, does DC ever republish it?
No, they kept it alive, I think, because they liked it. It wasn't selling. None of my stuff sells. I mean, understand? I have no commercial footprint whatsoever, because I completely reject the whole idea of you know, I don't really care what you think. I also don't have any respect for the taste of the audience, with all due respect. You know, the things you like are like, what? You really like that? I mean, geez.
Of your own stuff or just stuff in general?
Generally, I mean, it's like, but that's cat food. You know? At any rate, they kept that book alive because they liked it, and I was really disappointed because I wanted to do. There's an essay. David Brooks, who is the floundering member of Republican conservatism, and can't quite figure out how responsible he was for the shitstorm that we're in now.
New York Times writer, I guess.
Yeah. You don't have to do that. We both know.
Just forgive the condescension, just in case.
David Brooks annually publishes a series of essays that he regards as the Essays, his awards for essays. And one of these was from the Wilson letter, called The Other 60s, which really impressed me a lot because it confirmed a lot. It directly spoke to how I feel about the 1960s. And I wanted to do a closure to American Century that was about that era, that gap in time between the murder of JFK and the Beatles showing up on the Ed Sullivan Show, because that was that time of mourning, the mourning that existed between November and February, because the mourning was lifted when the Beatles got here. The 60s, as we know, it really began in February of '64, and I really wanted to play with that era, that gap in time, and they rejected it wholeheartedly. And there's a number of projects that I wanted to do that have died of mourning. That was one, and I was going to write and draw it, and it died, and I was just disappointed because I liked that era a great deal. I was a big fan of Mad Men until its hermeticness began to wear on me. It began to feel more and more like a play as opposed to a dramatic narrative. The show existed entirely interior. Once they stepped outside of the offices of Sterling Cooper, you realize you were in California, and it was now. And I loved that era because I was born in '50, and I discovered comic books the same summer that the Comics Code Authority was imposed on us. So there's a metaphor in there. And so by the time by that era, I mean, I was 13 when JFK was murdered, and my identification with that day is that Spider-Man #9 came out that day. And I remember walking to get that comic book at the candy store the day before comic book shops, and just that weekend was profoundly traumatic for kids. And
because everything stopped.
Yeah, well, also I watched Lee Harvey Oswald get murdered by Jack Ruby.
Yeah.
And I can't. I mean, I'm going to say something now that's going to be appalling. Just trust me on this. I'm likely the smartest guy working in comics today. It's like being the world's tallest midget. You know? It's not that big a deal. I say this without pretense. There are a bunch of pretentious motherfuckers who play smart. I don't do that. I'm a man among men and a worker among workers who's pretty hip. And at 13, I came to understand that this is telling a changing moment, that things were happening that I had no control over and would have no power of, and that to use a philosophical and technical sense, it was fucked up. And when the Beatles showed up, there was this exhalation, but my understanding of it was profoundly informed by my upbringing, which was to say a red diaper baby, that I did not trust the arrival of this release, this exhalation. I did not trust that we were on a curative path. And because I was born to left-wing parents with left-wing grandparents, I was by nature a leftist, but I'm now a disaffected leftist. And that disaffection began earlier than most. My disaffection began in the mid-1960s, the first time I witnessed the burning of a flag. And I recognized the fact that this was a nihilist gesture that was handing over a great object of symbolism to those who would use it better against me and mine. And that forced me away from the anti-war movement. I became much more insular, and it contributed to my use of drugs. And I became much more interested in an insular life, one of reading television, movies, comics. And my politics remained the same, but I found the world around me moving in directions that really had nothing to do with the way I was thinking. And a lot of that came back to thinking about that gap, that November 22nd, February 12th. And that time, that amorphous time, really appealed to me. And I was disappointed that I couldn't convince DC to let me follow through.
But you have these great ideas, and
ideas are bullshit. It's execution.
And I realize that, but also the fact that now, and certainly, you're doing your own thing. You're doing a lot of your own thing without DC and Marvel.
Well, because neither of them will hire me.
And I understand. But regardless, don't you think the opportunity? You've got a base of fans. I realize it's not millions. But you do have.
No, I have a fan.
Sure.
The two guys, they call each other on Sunday night.
Come on.
What do you think?
Give me well,
John. I have a very realistic perspective on my.
All right.
Okay.
Well.
And yes, I aged out of Marvel and DC.
But again, you have ideas that go beyond the tradition of what the mainstream wants to put out there. That is intriguing.
That may be, but it doesn't do me a damn. Well, now we can get began. Now we're
ready. All right, man. Don't sweat it. Not at all, man. We're glad you're here. Don't worry about it.
You're wearing a shirt that said, "Is that a menorah on you or a target?"
I kind of like the way you broke through
this. By the way, this is the high point of my day.
This is like
root beer and a scooter. That's what it's all about.
All we needed was a picture of Kool-Aid and scream, "Oh yeah!" That was fantastic, man. Don't kid yourself. That was beautiful. So don't sweat it, man. It's all good.
But you'll now be an object of ridicule for the rest of the life.
It's captured for posterity on the podcast.
I have absolutely no dignity nor scruples.
But no, honestly, Howard,
John, yes,
they're great ideas. They're interesting, literate ideas.
But I'm working for an audience that thinks that the New Mutants are good.
Howard, I respectfully, all the good Vertigo stuff over the years and things that think outside the box.
Yeah, but Vertigo was a company, was a division of a company that was run by people who hated comics.
Interesting.
Look.
That's the perception. I love that.
Well, look.
I'm sure Karen Berger would disagree, but I love that.
But they hated comics. They forbid thought balloons.
Okay. Because American Century was a Vertigo.
They forbid across the board. They forbid thought balloons.
Yes.
Because they regard and the idea when you take it upon yourself to completely obviate a traditional trope, in the context of the work that's being done, what you're demonstrating is a certain contempt for what has come before you.
I respect that. Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, the company was packed with British talent who were allowed to write Americans who used slang like wanker.
Right.
And it's it's fucking absurd. There was an Anglophilia incorporating a phenomenal contempt for American culture that informed much of Vertigo.
True. I'll grant you that. Yeah.
You know, and I had no respect for that whatsoever. I mean, you know, that great Rodney Dangerfield on French kids are so smart; they speak French. You know, it's the same as there's this enormous sense of inferiority complex relating to our British cousins. And, you know, fuck that. You know, I mean, we were number one for a long time. We're on the downslide right now. It's when we're well down the shit chute. But I have no illusions about the superiority of British culture. You know, and you know it's kind of like, you know, the contempt that the alt comics movement have for mainstream comics is so rich and so deep that it astonishes me that there's absolutely no acknowledgement, let alone self-awareness, of what is owed to the mainstream market for the existence of the alternative market in the first place.
Agreed.
And a couple of years back, there was an announcement about Lake Como, that arts thing that they do over there. And one of the talent, there were two talents who were listed in the Senate. There were two talents that I would have killed, to been a fly on the wall, to listen to watch one of them condescend to the other, and the other one having absolutely no clue just how condescended he was being done to. Names I will not mention. I'll mention it to you off the record.
God bless.
But you'll not hear it here because they're both twats. So, you know, I mean, comics as they are today, you know, I'm stuck between mainstream comics and weird comics. I'm too weird for the mainstream, and I'm too mainstream for the weird. And I'm again, I aged out of Marvel and DC in 12, and I'm pretty grateful in retrospect. I was resentful at first because, you know, you want to be loved, but I came to understand that I'd been sort of biding time, and I pretty much do whatever I damn well please, and that's a gift because I don't need the money, I don't need the attention, you know. Unlike a lot of my colleagues, I came to understand very early on that A, I had no commercial footprint anyway, and that B, whatever attention I had from the audience was going to be temporary and transient, because I had not attached myself to some super monster laser mutant dragon comic book, and found a base in an audience that would stay with me despite the dissolving of my skill set and the elimination of talent. You know, and there are so many guys working today whose work just sucks a bag of dicks, who are basically floating on their reputation of 25, 30 years ago. It's true. I won't name names, I will to you. But the fact of the matter is, of my generation, the only two guys who are producing work that's not a parody of itself are me and Walter.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of like, they're dead clowns.
Wow. Again, I appreciate the candor, Howard, absolutely.
Come on.
But wait a minute. Again, you say it's an awkward position of not too weird for the mainstream, too mainstream for the weird. That's a sweet spot, and there are some of us.
Yeah, but it meant that I had to seek another way.
Of course.
Listen, I had to find another way to get this sold healthily. You know, I mean, I didn't expect to live to be 50, let alone I'm pushing 75. Yeah. And this is what 75 looks like right now. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you don't look 70. It is what I mean. Look, Bernadette Peters is 78. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
My wife periodically punches me in the kidneys whenever I mention her name. Okay? You know. Okay. So I had to go outside of everything I've done in my life professionally has been to make it possible for me to make comic books. Okay, I went and worked in television shows I'd never watch, you know, because I had to find a way to survive in a world in which I wanted to do comics, but that comics didn't particularly care about what I was doing in it. Okay, comics fans tend to be obsessed with content, with little or no grasp of the form. They have no idea how it's done or why what's done is done. I've done 2 portfolio reviews this weekend, and in both cases, these guys had no idea what comics are. It's astonishing to me. You know,
storytelling.
Just the entire idea of what comics are. That, okay. You know, I mean, I accept. What are you raising your hand about?
My sister.
Oh, I can't. I'm so glad she's here. It's okay for civilians to have no idea what we do. You know, I live in a small redneck town, a purple town in a blue state, and people have no idea what I do for a living. When they find out they are non-blues, they have no fucking idea. They pay you for this? You know, really? What? You know, you must all that money from the Marvel movies. You must no. It isn't the way it So when someone who wants to be a comic book artist demonstrates to me that he has no clue whatsoever what a comic book is, that it's not just a bunch of random pictures, that there's a narrative structure and reason why this is this is this. There is as much a vocabulary or syntax in a language as there is in filmmaking. Okay. What's that?
He's my time cue. You'll forgive me.
How much time do we have?
We're fine. We're
Okay.
good.
We have a million minutes because I'm not fucking leaving.
I think we have like 30 or 40 minutes or so. So we're fine. We're out.
Dina,
You'll forgive me.
What was the
stand up and talk loud.
What's the difference in the comics climate between 1983 Flagg and 2023 Hey Kids Comics?
Because it would have seemed to me that it would afford the current environment. If I can expand that deep,
I don't think
it's easier to do. Crazy ideas.
Well, people don't read. We're not a reading culture. My generation was the last generation that consistently read for entertainment. I'm always reading at least 3 books. One upstairs bathroom, one downstairs bathroom, one Kindle. It's true. I read essays in both toilets, and I read fiction and nonfiction on my Kindle. And I'm listening to a book all the time as well, okay? I have a strong belief in narrative, and I also have a strong belief that a comic book artist's job is to do half of the writing, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And the audience does not understand what writing in comics is. The audience thinks that comic book artists are illustrators, that they translate the language of the writer into visuals, and that's not the case. My job as an artist, as a comic book, and if I'm working with another writer, is to take literary narrative and endow it with narrative value and imagery, and to make conscious choices about the size and shape of each panel, that those sizes and shapes have a direct impact on what the reader perceives and sees. And all of this intellectualism derives from the fact that I have no intrinsic talent. I had hunger and blind rage, which informed my desire to gain skills. And you watched me, those of you who have been aware of my career since the beginning, you watched me achieve those skills in the first 10 years of my career, in public, doing dreadful, miserable work in the service of junk. And it wasn't until I was driven out of comics by, where is he? What's his name again? By Jim Shooter, and did something else for a living for 2 years, that I developed an understanding of technique, an understanding of the value of commitment to technique, and that there was a language and a technique to the work that I was doing, that I had the same mindset that those civilians who don't know what comics are. And I developed an understanding by study, by repetition, of how to make comics that had narrative sense, that had narrative value. And a lot of these ideas I found later on repeated in Scott McCloud's book, but a lot of what he was saying was stuff that I taught myself on my own.
That's excellent.
And so I don't agree with a lot of what he says, because my work is informed by Alex Toth, Wallace Wood, and John Severin. Okay, the Severin is always the joke in the jacket. What? Really, Severin? Yes. I love texture and I love pattern. And but I talk about at great length that comic books are about images, a series of images endowed with narrative value. And that's a very subjective idea. But I know it when I see it, like pornography in the Supreme Court. By the way, I'm talking over your heads because most of you are too young to have any fucking idea what I'm talking about. It's really good.
This is outstanding.
There'll be a text.
Mentioning Wood, because on my Kindle, I have Shattuck. The Western, it's a crazy.
That's like you have a disease.
Well, I have Shattuck, but I'm getting better. But no, it's this really, like, Wood made these.
It's terrible.
It is, but
no.
Go ahead, give the context
right.
of Shattuck.
No, it's more the context of Wood.
And also Howard was assisting on Shattuck.
I penciled it.
There you go. Yes, indeed.
But the thing about, I stand on the shoulders of 5 men: Gil Kane, Gray Morrow, Wallace Wood, Neil Adams, and Joe Orlando. And Gil was my first boss, and although I did the least amount of actual hands-on work for him than any of those other people, I learned more from him than any of those other guys. Because I learned attitude, I learned understanding of my responsibility to the work, I learned how to sit at a table for 8 hours and not get up and do the job. Okay. By the way, Gil was guilty of every single thing that he was ever accused of. He was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. All that, despite that, I still owe him much of my career. I went to work for Wallace Wood at the recommendation of I forget whom, possibly Larry Ivey, and I learned about Wallace Wood. And by this time, whereas Gil was still a 45-year-old man on the make, Woody was a dissolute, blindly raging guy who had been curdled by his narcissism, in the sense that, you know, when I heard that Jack Kirby quote, you know, comics will whatever, you kid,
break your heart.
Break your heart. You know, what that implicit in that is, I came in expecting to be different, and that's just not the way it is. Comics is a meat grinder. If you go in there expecting to be treated differently, you're either an asshole or a narcissist. And Woody was that guy. He was both, and he was incredibly embittered. And he was making pages by Shattuck was the third strip. The other two were Sally Forth and Cannon. And Cannon was being made like yard goods. He would lay out a newspaper page, and he would have his assistant go through the swipe file and artograph, which is an overhead projector, artograph photographs, other people's artwork, to create this montage on the page, or lettered and panel boarded, of panels and drawings that were, you know, blue line tracings. And he would ink it, and it would become Wallace Wood. Because his brushwork was so powerful and so distinctive that he could take any other piece of artwork and make it his. He did the same thing with Shattuck. And I realized that when I ended that experience, and by the way, the high point of that experience was sharing an office with Jack Abel and another artist, who I came to understand that Jack, who was an incredibly lazy guy, was actually there mostly to fuck with this other guy all day. And that in 2 days, Jack realized that in me he had a henchman. And that I spent the entire time I was working for Wallace Wood fucking with this other guy with Jack Abel. It was really good. I mean, it was schoolyard shit. You know, I'll tell you who that was later. You'll have to remember all these names I got.
Indeed.
You know who it was.
What's recording? Have fun.
But I realized, I wanted to grow up to be Gil Kane, but I had a feeling I was going to end up like Wallace Wood. And he was a cautionary tale for me. And I have to say that my first work at DC Comics I got because Neil Adams, you know, bullied Murray Bolton into giving me a job. And I ended up ghosting work for Gray Morrow.
Wow.
And Gray was one of the best people ever. I don't love his work as much as I did then. I'm less in awe of his work. And I wish there were some way to see a mammoth atlas, an omnibus, of the best love comics ever made. Because, you know, there's if you think about it, Alex Toth's best work was the romance comics he did for Standard, the stuff he inked himself, and also the stuff that Mike Pepe inked. But Kubert did some astonishing romance stuff, and Kubert was never a good girl artist, and there's just great shit. Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito did as well. And Gray Morrow's best work was the work he did for Dottie Woolfolk on the love books at DC. They were just great jobs, beautiful. And it was Joe Orlando who rabbied me at DC, protecting me from Carmine Infantino, because Carmine hated me because of my association with Gil. They hated each other since they were kids. And no, there were people I still hate when I was a kid. Fuck that, man. I mean, there were people at this show I gladly heard they were dead by the time we left the room. No, he's dead. He's dead.
Well, that's right.
But no, there are other people here. I'll name names for you again. That guy. I hold a grudge like bloodstain on silk. So just know this. I'm not forgiveness must be fucking earned. There it is. So, but where Orlando really shaped me up and taught me how to behave like a professional, and like to be a guy, to be a mensch. Joe was a guy who was never held in, and he was always the least guy at DC, and he'd survived, and he was an incredibly well-dressed man. He was a guy who I think never perceived himself as attractive, so he built a carapace of good tailoring, and I warmed to that. I really did. I identified with it strongly. I came in with I did a job during the bicentennial year for Ben and Bowles, because the way you made money in the 1970s in comics, there was no money in comics.
Advertising.
You did advertising. So I did a whole bunch of storyboards and animatics, and the paycheck was fucking huge. I mean, it was enormous. And I went out to Barney's and bought a whole wardrobe because I decided to go from looking like the guy who would show up at the Allman Brothers tribute bands to Brian Eno, and I did. I did that transformation. Got everything would have just completely sanded off. And I showed up at the office one day wearing literally from head to toe. I was wearing an Armani suit, Armani dress shirt, a beautiful tie, Piatelli shoes. I was fucking styling. And Orlando was like, he loved me more. Just because I had embraced the idea. I was wearing cufflinks. I was just totally fashioned up. But Joe was really instrumental in making me an adult. Okay, because all those four other guys were basically various levels of embitterment and entitlement. And Joe never felt entitled. And Joe taught me to avoid entitlement. And to this day, it is a serious part of my experience. That people think I'm being self-deprecatory when I diminish my 70s work, and it's not. It's actually an indication of massive ego because it means I've gotten good. Because I sucked then, I don't now. But Orlando was really a leveling influence, and making Joe Orlando laugh was one of the great joys of my experience. He was of all those guys, he was the one with the highest capacity for wit.
What kind of, when you were working with Orlando, what kind of, was it the sword and sorcery stuff?
No, he just yelled at me a lot. No, I'm serious. I'm not kidding.
What books did you?
No, there was no real editorial he was not overseeing me that way.
Okay.
It was like, don't do that, do this. Be that way, don't be that way.
Okay.
I grew up fatherless. My dad disappeared from my life when I was 9, and it turned out he wasn't really my father anyway. So that's a whole other story. I'm a bastard, literally and figuratively. And my brothers also had 2 different fathers. My mother got around. When I called my middle brother to tell him this, we found this out 5 months after she died. I called my middle brother to tell him that we all had different fathers, and I explained what was going on. There was a momentary pass at the moment. And he comes in and he says, "Holy fuck, it's just like Bonanza." Which I thought was a pretty telling observation of the adult experience. Not a bad ad lib. Credit where credit is due. My brothers are pretty funny guys.
Are you Little Joe then?
I think I'm Adam.
You're Adam, even better. Or the black sheep, the man who leaves.
And I have Pernell Roberts' hair, so it worked out good. No, so there been. I spent much of my adult life seeking, male mentors.
Sure.
It's just been that way. You grow up. My mother was a lunatic. She hated us because we represented all the worst choices she'd ever made. And so I spent a lot of. Gil. I attached myself to Gil. I learned how to tie a necktie from Gil. I learned how to dress from Joe. And just for me at least, my experience was deeply informed by seeking, male mentors, and I'm that guy in the sense that my generation was the last generation that worked with assistants and talent. I always, to this day, still have an assistant because I know there's work of mine that I can delegate. There's stuff that I can get other people to do for me. And then, is that my mom? This guy.
Probably. Who brought you?
Look, willing to mistake attention for affection. Well, that's.
Keep going. You're awesome.
I am the fucking best.
It's the best. I love this, pal. Keep going.
Comic books is the center of my universe. As I was telling the guy who edits my stuff, who was hiding in the room. I'm working on my first prose piece since I was in high school.
Hey, awesome.
And it's incredibly intimidating. I have no fucking idea where to go. I know the story I'm going to tell. That's there. The plot's all there. But as I said, ideas are bullshit.
Well, sure,
it's execution. I have no idea where to attack the story. I want to do it was one of the 3 surviving pieces from. I want to do a book about how much I hate religion. And I had a story about Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and at least one of them would get me killed. And so I'm going to do the Jew one. It's the safest one because Jews are nicer than me. But it's still pretty appalling. Trust me on this. It's appalling. And I have no idea how to go about it. I am struggling in a way that I have not struggled in years.
Scary or exciting?
I'm both.
Maybe they all walk into a bar.
This is why you don't have a career.
Wow.
Don't tell them that.
When you come up with...
By the way, that Dean Haspiel.
Yes.
Dean was my assistant when he was 16 years old. He worked on me the second wave of the American Flagg stuff. He is one of the most iconoclastic members of his generation, a raging pain in the ass, and smart and clever, and a winner of an Emmy, which he, I believe that would be engraved on his tombstone and pissed on within a day.
Oh, that's true.
So.
No, one of the great stars of underground comics, Dean Haspel, is
I don't call Dean an underground comics artist. Dean is a Massomenos comics book.
Well, when you say you're too weird for the mainstream and I'm too mainstream for the weird, my version is I'm too indie for the mainstream.
Yeah,
mainstream for
yeah.
the
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Well, now again, execution. I understand some of these ideas that you haven't put in comics. Would you consider making in prose? Because I understand.
No, because the problem I'm having is that I write descriptive visuals.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look, I learned to write comics better by working on really shitty television shows for 15 years. Okay.
Like Viper.
Oh, unwatchable crap. I mean, I am so grateful to have had the work that I got, but I was completely, spelunked by my CV. Because of a comic book guy, you cannot know how many times when I'm about to be hired by a show, when the guy that's reading comics for 3 months, that's their comics expert in development, that Rob Liefeld. I said, no, not me, no. Just, but distancing myself from that reality, because I was hired on Flash because the two guys who produced it liked my work on Flagg. That fucked my career for a year because people who would hire me saw the pilot but not my episodes. My episodes were vastly better than the pilot, and they really weren't. They were cleverer, they were funnier, and they were smarter paced. So I had one shot at a better show, and my hubris got in the way and fucked me up. I'd written all my specs for work were 10 o'clock shows.
Okay.
And I wrote a homicide that was very well received. Never produced, but it was a sample. And the rule is you don't go to do a visit, you don't go to homicide with a homicide spec. You write a spec for another show and then you go. I mean, for example, nobody ever did a home improvement spec because nobody in the business watches home improvement. I'm serious. You don't do a show. You do specs on shows that people in the business watch. And I had an offer from Renee, what's his name, at Law and Order, the Law and Order franchise. But the money was almost enough, and the title was a rung below mine. And my arrogance and hubris led me to believe, it was early enough in pilot season, my arrogance and hubris led me to believe that if I'm getting this offer now, I can get something better than this. And I fucked it up, and I let it go, and I never got anything as good again. And the problem remains that because I do both write and draw, I am suspect. People who write and draw are often regarded as half and half talent. That, why don't I just do one? Why am I doing both? And a lot of that comes down to the fact of a complete misunderstanding of what writing is in comics. Writing is not me illustrating a writer's story. Writing is me transliterating literary ideas into visual narrative. The writing in comics, a good 40 to 50% of the writing in comics is done by the artist. And one of the reasons that ways of comics are different is that comic artists today don't read very often. They don't read a lot. They don't read well. So they don't have a real understanding of narrative value. They don't know what narrative value means. Anecdotally, one of the most interesting books, one of the most fun books to come out of DC over the past couple of years was those weird Hanna-Barbera aberrations.
They were amazing.
They weren't amazing.
Well,
a lot of them sucked. The big disappointment was that Snagglepuss book. That was just, you don't do a book about that. You're doing Tennessee Williams, and you don't reference Dawn Powell. You reference Dawn. If you're going to do some research, you know who Dawn Powell is. Come on.
You're killing it.
Well, I am. Well, Dawn Powell.
Well, but
not Peggy Guggenheim. Dawn Powell.
But your rough and ready was a lot of fun.
That was Dan DiDio comes to me and says, we want to do a book about this, but Rough and Ready is old Jewish comedians. You're the guy to do it. Okay, because I'm an old Jew. And at any rate, the Flintstones. C.P. was a really good drawer, but there was a complete absence in the context of the Flintstones, in the page of the interior of the book, of any of the motif available. Flintstones is a motif-rich concept. I mean, everything about Flintstones is motif. Amanda Connor's varying covers for that book had more narrative value in them than any of the pages in the book itself. Because Amanda has an extraordinary grasp of narrative value, whether intrinsic or intellectual, I don't know. But those covers are rife with an understanding of motif. Gil always said that the best storytellers in comics were the wordless cartoonists in the New Yorker. And I had no idea what he was talking about. In the same way that I never knew what Bill Spicer meant when he said that adult comics will only become adult with humor, because I identified gravitas with enormity. And when I came to understand that what Jack Cole was talking about on Plastic Man, Thrills, Chills, and Laughs, was an understanding of reaching an audience that had an understanding of the foolishness of much material. And I like material that has genuine comedy, and I don't like that bwahaha bullshit from whatever that's pandering crap. But I'm talking about actual going for jokes, building comedy, pacing material, and selling an idea for comedy. And I think the Flintstone missed that boat. Those covers caught that boat and ran with it.
We have 15 or 20 left. 20 minutes left. Excellent. If people have questions,
jump right in. Dean's a fucking pig.
Yeah, exactly. But also, and again,
I'm available.
Clearly, Alex says, "Howard, how are you?" And we get a
going?
fantastic question.
You need a bathroom?
Yes.
All right, that's
you need
okay.
a toilet, don't you?
I'll see.
That's all right. Come back.
Middle-aged women, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it. Let's go.
When you and I love talking to you about modern television, and again, I understand the stuff you had to write. Is there a genie you go, God, because they've obviously expanded narrative. We're getting season-long stories as opposed to episodic that you had to deal with.
What's your question?
Like, is there any sort of itch of you, like,
No,
at the
not
end
at
of
all.
it?
No.
Happy to close that television door.
I love being an audience. I really do. I have every streaming service available because and it's a racket, because there's one thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But again, but it builds and it builds. Modern TV, for better or worse, is the equivalent of pop novels. And I love television. I'm really pissed off that tonight's the final episode of this third season of Gilded Age, and I really want to watch it. And I may not be able to watch it if I don't catch it tonight at the hotel. I won't be able to catch it till I get home because the fucking hotel I'm staying in New York tomorrow does not have access to streaming. Motherfuckers! What is it? 1950s? What is it? I've been watching the show and realizing that there's a huge fandom of the show on Facebook, and they're all talking about the shit that doesn't interest me. I've been telling read Gore Vidal's 1876 and Empire. That informs the material. That kind of stuff. So my interest in comic. I like historical stuff. I like dirty stuff, and I like crime stuff. I just finished a 25-page book for the Department of Education and the Tenement Museum in New York City. And I've got the colors. My colorist just delivered a second draft of colors. And that's my work this week, is to do notes and get that stuff ready to deliver so that Ken Brusnak is. We reverse the system of color and lettering. We letter into color. Ken letters into color because he uses color as a template against which to drop work out and play with that. So colors first, and that's just all reference. It's all research, and it's very much it's the Jews who work for the Gilded Age, that kind of thing. But yeah, I love TV. I bank stuff because I don't like to watch things week to week. It's not made. My wife is still operating in the model of episodic TV, and I love a lot of shit, but there's a lot of stuff that I don't get. I'm underwhelmed by Ludwig, despite the presence of Anna Maxwell Martin, who I'm very fond of. I think David Mitchell's a really funny writer, but I don't like his work on screen. His book on the British Kings is fantastic. It's really funny. And I did not like Death Valley, despite the presence of Timothy Spall, whom I worship. But
which streamer was Death Valley on?
It's either BritBox or Acorn.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, it's
like I said, I have them all.
Yeah,
but I love I love Art Detectives with Stephen Moyer.
Yep. Okay.
Who, playing a sympathetic character for that realm. He usually plays bad guys. But I've been a fan of what's his name, Stephen Graham, since Boardwalk Empire. He's fantastic. So I all this stuff. I'm looking forward to the second season of 1,000 Blows, about the advent of professional boxing in England in the late 1890s. No, I have no interest in draw. A lot of my stuff is under option right now. Lionsgate is in the process of negotiating the option for American Flagg.
Excellent.
Zack Snyder has an option on Black Kiss.
Excellent.
Never going to happen. Options where optimism go to die. I made an enormous amount of money in the early aughts on a number of periodic options on Power and Glory.
Yes.
Never happened. It's just, I am not, my stuff is just too odd. And it doesn't, you know, one of the reasons that, look, when I introduced American Flagg on the first panel at a convention, someone in the audience asked me what his powers were. That was a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And my answer was that he was able to remove his underwear without taking his pants off, and that he made ice cream. This did not endear me. Okay. This did not make me friends. Okay. But you know, I mean, if anyone remember the show Dream On,
of course.
That was me. I was placed in front of the television set very early on, and I love television. There was a series called Prophet that was by John McNamara and Dave Greenwald. I wrote episode 9. The show got canceled with episode 8, and episode 9 is referenced in episodes 4 and 5. And what got me the job was this is the just before the advent of streaming. I said, the television is a medium that congratulates you for being too hip for television, and once you're convinced that they've got you by the balls. And that was what television was like until streaming came along. Because television is flattened out by the advent of streaming. And that the realm of choice is so vast that there's no real consequence in being enraptured. You know, I mean, you can pick and choose. I watch a lot of TV, you know, but I also read a great deal. I don't watch movies on television because movies deserve screens. Love the new Superman movie. Was hinky about the Fantastic Four.
What bothered you about FF?
Beautiful and languorous and lumbering. It just didn't feel like it cared about me in any way. And I still feel that Rosie O'Donnell should have been playing Galactus. She would have been a great Galactus. Those lips, those eyes. You know,
interesting.
If you're gonna gender swap, don't do the Silver Surfer. Do Galactus.
That's hilarious.
It's got Gal in his name. You know. I mean,
that's true, Gal.
Rosie O'Donnell. You know.
I loved Fargo. Your recent Western.
Okay.
Do you want to tell people about that?
I did my one and only crowdfunding. I'll never do it again.
Really?
No.
How come?
I hated the experience so much.
What about it? Because
it's shaming. You're tap dancing. It's just like, I really fucking.
Yeah, you got to pump the product. I respect that.
I don't. I have a lot of contempt for that. I just don't. I don't like the idea of trying to talk people into loving me. I really don't.
Did you reach the goals that you truly wanted to reach?
I don't know. I was labor in this context. You know.
Mike Stanford. Stratford. I beg your pardon. Yeah, he's.
Mike is a guy I've known for many, many years. Introduced him by Michael Kaluta, who was a VP of marketing at Sony and then at Warner Brothers, who's in Pittsburgh right now for the Pulp Fest.
Yes.
He turned me on to these books, and they're very much my meat. I mean, they're the kind of stuff that I like to draw. I mean, the novels are, you know, the template is the same. They have the same level of sexuality as the James Bond novels, which is to say a lot of wink and hustle. But they're very drawable. And I've written the sequel, the second book, which was originally to be drawn by Jackson Guice, who of course unfortunately died this year. Brent Schoonover is drawing it now. And I'm not involved in it. I've already delivered the script. And you know, when the time comes, it'll get done. But I did not like the process of crowdfunding. I do not like putting myself into the marketplace as that kind of commodity. I don't really care what people think of me, and putting myself in that position meant that I had to pretend that I did. And I didn't like the experience at all. I'll never do it again.
Interesting.
This prose piece I'm doing is part of a crowd. That's for that guy that I think you turned me on. I think you put me to that guy, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? You doing something for him in that regard?
He interviewed me and I drew the thing.
For the
Jewish thing?
No, it's something else. This is the.
Is this the Neotech stuff or no?
No. I thought it was. It's a prose thing. Comics prose doing prose.
Oh no, that's not.
No, not from you. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
did Neotex not work out for you?
No, I'm still they're still there. I mean, I'm still. I don't know. I haven't talked to John in a while.
Okay.
I may give
they do short content. Well, novellas rather than novels. Or
no, but this is not the kind of. No,
okay.
I mean, the story I'm doing is no. This is boy. Talk about grabbing commercial gold. This is it, babe. No. So crowdfund. This is going to be a crowdfunding project, but I'm just doing a short story and letting it be.
Okay.
Letting it go.
But the market is so weird right now.
Is there a market?
Well, that's my point. Exactly.
I'm like I say, I'm 75 years old.
Yeah, I know.
I have no future, and I mean, right now I'm where Thomas is in the process of structuring the map and the book of the American Flagg omnibus.
Okay.
It's 1,100 pages long.
Yeah.
And I've done the breakdown of a 16-page news story.
Okay.
And there's a shitload of back matter you've never seen. It's a
cool.
movie with added value. And Ken is doing all the production work. So it'll be out in June, I think. Is that right? June? Not June?
Later.
Sometime late. Sometime not June.
Right, there you go.
In a June adjacent time. So we're working on that, and I don't really have anything else on the deck. I'm writing a Zorro miniseries.
Hey, fun! Is it?
Calm down.
Well, I like Zorro. I'm sorry.
And I mean, I'm not sure it's ever going to appear in English language. It's being done for the Spanish language market. I'm writing it in English, obviously.
Of course.
And it's a nutty Zorro story. I remain stunned that they went along with this. I'm assuming they're going to shit blood when they read it. It's a very offbeat Zorro story. I wrote a 10-page Zorro story for the Spanish language market that Eduardo Riso drew.
Wow.
That was pretty eccentric. I mean, the story itself was about a touring company of Shakespearean players, 3 people performing Shakespeare, coming to Capistrano, and it develops that the male lead is Sir Percy, Scarlet Pimpernel.
Oh, that's fun.
Who is there to murder Don Diego's dad because he believes that Don Diego betrayed one of the nobles during the French Revolution and sent him to the guillotine. And what it develops is that it's actually Bernardo who did it, and did it out of love, and all is made good. But we have a nice sword fight between Zorro and the Scarlet Pimpernel.
This is a 10-page story.
Yeah.
And all of that is in a 10-page story.
Yes.
Nice going.
Yeah, but look, there's nothing that comics. The only thing modern comics suffer from is a lack of depth of content, and that kind of like vamping. Tell a fucking story and get to it. I mean, the content in most comic books these days, it barely gives you 6 minutes in the crap, right? and it's just and it's a laziness attached to that. There really is. It's bad gags and posturing and just pulpy horse shit.
So Howard is not a fan of Decompression, which started in the 2000s. Indeed.
It's a cheap trick. It's masturbatory writing at its most finest.
The European market, Howard, and I'm glad you're getting these gigs, but half the time when I talk to Howard, it's like, yeah, I wrote something, it's in French, finally it's coming out in English.
That's not true, just once.
Was it the only one time?
Yeah.
That turn of the century Western or whatever it was.
Oh, that one, yeah, that's true. Well, that was for Disney.
Okay.
Because back in the Disney.
Give a title so people might find
Century West.
Century West, there you go.
Which is published by Image. It's about the advent of the 20th century in a small Texas town. I really like turn of the century American Westerns because I really believe. One of the things I've come to believe is that the 20th century was invented around 1910, and modernity arrived around 1910, and so many things happened culturally and technologically back then, and I love seeing that overlap of automatic weapons and horses. Those two things. I mean, I can watch The Wild Bunch till the cows come home, and The Professionals. That era really appeals to me. I mean, Fargo is that. Fargo's novels were sold as westerns, but they're actually 1910, 1915 adventure stories. And to a certain extent, so is Sunshine Patriots, a book that nobody cared about or read, about two veterans of Roosevelt's Rough Riders who end up being hired guns working for a movie studio in 1911 in Los Angeles, defending itself against the onset of the first wave of the Sicilian mafia. So I like that shit. I mean, I don't care about super laser dragon monster stuff. I just don't. It just doesn't interest me. If that's my mom, she's dead.
Exactly.
I mean, the stories that I care about are I'm just not that interested in this stuff.
Howard.
Yeah.
You turned me on to Banshee, which we love. Did you see Yellowstone?
Yeah. I couldn't watch them the last season. I found it unwatchable. I love the show. I watched the first season when it first aired and hated it. Then I watched the rest of it and I got sucked in and watched everything in the run. I really dug it. And I'm not a Kevin Costner fan. I love Kelly Riley. Kelly Riley on Banshee was amazing. I'm not Banshee, Britannia was great. Britannia,
cool.
Britannia was a show that was very influenced by Stephen Pressfield. Stephen Pressfield wrote is best known for writing The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Sure.
But is also a historical novelist who writes history novels of the ancient world in a modern vernacular. His great Gates of Fire is about the siege of Thermopylae. Was on the schedule of Warner Brothers until 300 was announced, and he was gracious enough to send a really nice letter to Frank Miller, congratulating him for getting to the gate first. Gates of Fire is a phenomenal read. It makes 300 look like what it deserves to look like. It's phenomenal. It really is. Britannia is about the second invasion of the Roman invasion of the British Isles, with David Morrissey, Kelly Riley. It's phenomenal. The girl who played Matilda in the original production of Matilda in London in 2012 plays one of the female leads, and Riley is fantastic. It's all these British actors you're used to seeing wearing Victorian waistcoats and shit like this, running around in furs and feathers and claws, being savages at each other. And it's 3 seasons, 2 of which are very good. The third was a little problematic, but it's really good. And Riley is fantastic. The guy who played the Emperor in the super movies, Star Wars movies. He plays one of the Bavarian teams. Zoe Wanamaker, Sam Wanamaker's daughter.
Sure.
Sam Wanamaker. This woman was one of the lawyers on The Split. Again, playing a barbarian princess. It's a pisser.
Interesting.
It's great. It's really good. So.
You know what sucks? We're out of time.
Fuck me.
But no, listen. Obviously, to be continued on a Word Balloon podcast, hopefully.
That would be good.
And truly, likewise, man. And seriously,
I hope I haven't bored you, and I'm very grateful for all you being here. I'm stunned how many of you showed up for this shit.
Excelsior!